And so again, like this is where we just crush it. Where when we're collaborating with like a global brand, you'll see us being very selective in that it has to overlap with the audience that we have, right? That Gen A, Gen Z, crypto native audience, where we're bringing in like an F1 versus like a Procter and Gamble.
These are real people. Those are real users. Others may claim levels around there in terms of users. It's farmers, it's bots, it's anons. These guys are real users.
Like that is our value proposition, and we've got to scale that big time. But I think we have all the ingredients and we have the foundation right now to really start marching in that direction.
It's something that activates a part of the brain that is reminiscent of DeFi summer and of the times in crypto where you would come back to an application or a platform of applications.
Once you do that, I guarantee you, every global brand will start knocking on your door.
Welcome back to the Rollup. We are your hosts. I'm Andy.
I'm Robbie, and this is your home to learn from the biggest guests, the brightest minds at the tip of innovation.
Our goal is to help spread the collective knowledge of everyone in our community.
We are breaking crypto out of its echo chamber and taking it to the real world.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy a quick word from some of our awesome partners who make this show possible. The intersection of AI and crypto is moving fast, and soon an agent will be managing your on-chain transactions for you. But without guardrails, it's a disaster waiting to happen. Newton locks agents to your intent with cryptographic proofs and real penalties if they slip. Learn more at Magic Newton on X. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Rollup. Today we have our Abstract fam in the house, Luca and Michael, to talk about the rising success of Abstract, streaming, consumer applications, crypto's breakthrough moment, and more. Of course, with Robbie, Michael, Luca, good to see you guys. Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
What's good?
It's your first
Pleasure
time
to have you guys on.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, hyped. Lots to
So,
talk about.
Michael, it's your first time, Mr. Tech, ZK Sync background, builder. Lot to your story. Would love to just get a brief rundown of who you are, who's Michael, what's your favorite ice cream flavor, why are you in crypto?
Again, like I'm a crypto geezer, right? Just coming
Okay.
out of Bitcoin from like, the Palo Alto, Hal Finney days of California Avenue at Anthony's Nut House. But I think for a lot of like us that came out of crypto in those early days, it was like that cypherpunk movement, right? Where, there's like an alternate version of the internet. Some of us also came in through Silk Road. So like again, like a lot of it was like, the stories you hear from like the generation before us that built out the commercial internet, where crypto felt like, like kind of like our kind of Wild West frontier. And then got super lucky to where I was in the Ethereum seed round, helped build out ETH 2.0, and that was a way to make Ethereum go fast. But to be honest, like that was like a lot of my Chinese friends that I grew up playing World of Warcraft with that were probably one of the earliest contributors, both investors and contributors, technical contributors to Ethereum back in 2014, 2015. So again, like just kind of growing up playing Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, eventually got me into Ethereum, and then just kind of been on and off, just in crypto, helping out projects that kind of spun out of Ethereum, including ZK Sync, but had a stint back in television, and then as well as AAA gaming with Activision Blizzard, where I launched 5 games, and then obviously meeting absolute chads like Luca along the way. We met like 2+ years ago, where I think what Luca, the entire Pudgy team were doing, like that was like the great white hope, right? Like in that these were probably the most equipped people to bring crypto mainstream. And again, like they have proven that out time and time again. So when it came time to build the ultimate consumer chain where you're kind of bringing the crypto Avengers together, it just made sense, to obviously, link up with Luca, Lorenzo, and the whole crew.
You kind of look like Steve Aoki, man.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, Michael, and I didn't realize that you were quite the crypto OG as well.
Crypto's dog
I've seen a
years,
lot.
so kind of even coming out of the Ethereum seed round, you feel like, I don't know, 150 on the inside.
Michael, I got a quick question before we get into the meat and potatoes here. Given your OG days in the cypherpunk movement, Ross Ulbricht is free. The free Ross movement worked, and curious if you have any takes on how the whole cypherpunk movement has evolved with now Ross being free.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of that was, again, personal take, but he's made a scapegoat. Like, yeah, like there's shit that he did that he probably shouldn't have. But again, like, it's like, Sean Fanning and crew with Napster. Like, these were like, he's just creating a marketplace. Like, you know, people want to get high. People are going to want to link up and, do things. He just created the rails to do it. I think if with under better guidance, he would have probably helped us accelerate consumer crypto much faster than the pace that we're currently on.
Free Ross. Guys, thanks for being here. Again, excited to chat about Abstract. Luca, it's probably your third time on or so, but we've only focused on Pudgy Penguins because I think the last time we had you on, I'm not even sure if Abstract was really in its even like testnet or still like idea phase. So I'd love to understand your perspective, man, of the Abstract story and kind of why this made sense for the Pudgy Penguins brand as well as yourself, and kind of what's the story from the kind of transition from Pudgy Penguins into Abstract?
Yeah, so the story is a pretty interesting one. I'll try not to give you a super loaded version, but I think it kind of started with like, okay, Pudgy had web had we were in Walmart. We knew we knew we were going to Walmart. We had this whole like NFT integration tied to the toys. Uh, we needed to go onto a layer two. When I was kind of exploring which layer twos to go to, we started to procure, grants for the ecosystem. Ultimately, I thought to myself, like, whichever chain is in the world's biggest retailer tied to this product, tied to crypto's best community or one of crypto's best communities, thought we'd bring a lot of value. And so I was trying to procure some sort of grant for that. As we were kind of going through the negotiations, it was pretty clear that like we would get a pretty sizable amount to go build on a chain. And then I think like, if some chain is offering me 10, 20 million bucks, like why? Right. And ultimately it came down to the thought where I felt like we would leak a lot of value by just committing to somebody else's chain. And it was clear that like we were the edge case and the thing that somebody would champion if we were to go build in that ecosystem. Um, and that like we would create hundreds of millions of dollars in speculative value there. And so as an entrepreneur, like I wanted to be fiscally responsible. I didn't want to leak that value. Well, like, okay, yeah, I can go take 10 million bucks, go build on this chain. But ultimately, like I'm bringing hundreds of millions of dollars in value to their ecosystem. That seems like a bad trade-off. Like, what does it actually take to build our own chain and our own ecosystem? It's kind of how like the idea first came around. But then as like we kind of committed that like, okay, a chain is something we're willing to explore. There's so many holes, like we don't build blockchains, et cetera, whatever. Then I was at a dinner with Saigar and he was just telling me as he was building Frame, he's like, dude, like I love building a chain is really fun. It's super exciting. I think we have a great technical team to do it. But ultimately, like the community side, the marketing side, like all of this is a real burden on me. And naturally, like everybody has different parts of their brain. Some people are really good at the marketing stuff and really good at the technical stuff, but most people aren't really good at both. And it came clear to us that, oh, there might be some sort of opportunity here where it's like Saigar and crew have been building a chain for the last year. They're really well positioned from a technical perspective to go and embark and build this the way that it needs to be built. And we have the community and the marketing side down pat. I think we're one of the, if the not the best team in crypto at marketing and community building. And then that's when I was like, okay, we take it a little more seriously. And then like as we're kind of exploring the opportunities, Michael was talking to me about a lot of the ambitions that he had, a lot of the different partnerships and places and where he saw blockchain going. And then I was like, oh shit, a third piece of the puzzle, which is like ultimately you can't like each org needs its own form of leadership. Like I'm the CEO of Pudgy Penguins, Michael's the CEO of the foundation, right? Like you can't just be the CEO of three different things. And I know myself well enough. Some people can. I'm not equipped yet to be that. And so, okay, Saigar came to the picture, then Michael came to the picture, was like the perfect person to be a CEO. And I was like, oh, well, the chain can actually happen. Let's go and explore like what it is to build a chain. And let's actually take this thought seriously. And this is where the moment really came where I was like, oh, this is super bullish. Because when you take a deep dive and you explore all the other blockchains, you kind of come to a couple different conclusions. The first one is everyone's doing the exact same thing, right? Following the exact same build pattern, building the exact same ethos, everyone's general purpose, really just trying to follow the leader and hope, throwing darts at the wall and hoping that they become the next Ethereum and Solana. And to me, that's like a super fragmented and anti first principles approach. Like if you think about first principles entrepreneurship, like there's roadmap to like how you scale. Like building a general purpose like right off the jump is like totally like the antithesis of like first principle entrepreneurship. Like how are you going to go and build like that? It just is like it's like building a city. Like you build cities around attractions, right? And around vocal points. Like you don't go and just like plop into the desert and just go build a utopia and be like, they're just going to come. They're just going to come. We're going to build everything and everything first. Like, no, you start off with a Disneyland or something that brings people to a destination. And as this attraction gains momentum, you build, more facets around it, more attractions around it. And so the ethos and how everyone was building it was really flawed. And then the second part was like, we were looking at the competitive landscape and it was like, everyone was doing these backdoor TVL deals, trying to prop up these Fugazi vanity metrics. And it's like, nobody was actually building a blockchain with integrity. You could tell that if you were actually like to run like a good entrepreneurship, like, a good entrepreneur, like rundown, you're like, they're not actually thinking about this critically. And yet they're getting these huge valuations, these huge fundraisers. And it's like how it's just super flawed. And then with that was like the third part of that, which kind of like was the straw that broke the camel's back, was really like us reminiscing on that same line of thought with Pudgy and why we bought Pudgy, right? Like we bought Pudgy because everyone was doing the same thing and following the same playbook, the Bored Ape playbook, right? Everybody was trying to be apes. And then when you looked even more critically, it's like, oh, they're not even, it felt like nobody was a good entrepreneur in NFTs. And that there was a lot of holes in what they were building. And it just was against first principles. And there was nothing really too innovative and nobody was trying to do something different. And there was a glaringly obvious playbook, with NFTs that I thought was just obvious, but wasn't obvious to everyone else. And then I had that same conclusion with Abstract. I was like, well, why isn't there like one website for all of these chains where I can just go to and do everything, right? Like no bullshit, no like figuring out what the ecosystem wallet is. Just like right now, blockchains are very fragmented. They're like puzzle pieces. You got to put them together, right? Like if you're on Sui, you got to go download this wallet and then you got to go to this experience and you just got to go like 8 different places or Ethereum or so. It's all like this, right? And then I think that it was that trifecta for us. It was like, oh shit, I see the same opportunity in blockchains that we saw in NFTs, which is like the bar is still incredibly low, the valuations are incredibly high, and the tone has still yet to be set. Like nobody's really set the tone outside of Ethereum and Solana. And I still think that there's a separate tone in our spirit, a consumer tone that I think has yet to be really set, which is like a more curated experience that is really easy for the layman, for the average person. Because I think like people in crypto don't give themselves the credit they deserve, which is like, this is a very sophisticated asset class with a very sophisticated user base. But like your local barista, like the true mass, is not here. And they're not here because the puzzles are too complicated to put together. And then probably the final piece was like the ETFs, right? When the ETFs started happening, it was like super clear. It was like institutions are here and they're coming and the floodgates are open. And that is now finally a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if we want crypto to be the industry that we want it to be, right? Like the true infra and backbone for the next generation of the internet, that it is going to have to break through to that barista and to that waiter and to that average Joe. And that is really my specialty, right? Like my whole career was made speaking to that average person, that low income person, right? Just somebody on like the the middle side of the barbell, blue collar. And I'm just like, nobody was building for that. And that, I think, was also then the biggest opportunity, because I was like, oh shit, there is a consumer build that we envisioned, that we started to flesh out and map out, that nobody else was building. That, to me, the consumer opportunity is hands down, by a Texas mile, the biggest opportunity in crypto, right? Because it is the blue ocean, right? Now that you've kind of really tacked off, the tech is finally here. Anyone who says it isn't doesn't know what they're talking about, right? The institutions are finally here. Those are evident in the inflows and the ETFs and all of the progress that's being made there. Well, we're finally at the final frontier in crypto, and the final frontier is consumer adoption. But to build for consumer and to truly actually win that race, you've got to build it differently. It's got to be different. It can't be the same build as everybody else. Because one, the build that everybody else has been building is just a completely flawed build. But to build for consumer, it's unbelievably flawed, right? And it started with Portal. So people, for people who are not familiar, a good analogy here is like abstract, the blockchain is our Anthropic, right? And Portal is our Claude, right? So Portal is our consumer-facing product. It's the product that, if you've never interfaces with the blockchain before, I hands down believe it's the best 0-to-1 onboarding in crypto. You want to onboard somebody into crypto, send them to portal.abs.xyz. I promise you there isn't a better onboarding experience. And there isn't a better, probably not only a 0-to-1, but probably a 1-to-5 experience. I think a lot of what we're focusing on now is like the 5 to 100, right? Which Solana and Ethereum and Base have been doing really well. But I think our foundation of our 0-to-1 and our 1-to-5 is just unparalleled. And that will put us in a position, I think, to scale and to reach people that and really fulfill the 10-year promise that I think a lot of builders have set out to build, which is, how do you bring consumers on chain, via the masses, and actually do it, right? You can do it on the back end, on the B2B side. There's a lot of ways, but I'm interested on getting the barista and the high schooler. I'm interested in getting these people on chain. And that's how it kind of came together. And then probably the later end of the story is, we had a little bit of good momentum, because I think a lot of people have trusted us over the last couple of years. We're a team that has told people that we're going to do things, and we do them. And so we came out of the gates, gaining some momentum, doing all the things that I think you need to do when building a blockchain. And then Pengu happened. And the beauty about Pengu is, Pengu was the 8th, I thought it was the 10th biggest airdrop of all time. Somebody fact checked me and said it was the 8th biggest airdrop of all time. We airdropped all the early abstract believers, right? People don't know this, but it was like $50 million to the abstract community, Giga Chads and elites. And we brought a lot of people in. And I think that really created the hype. They were like, dude, holy man, 8th biggest airdrop of all time. It was a 2-for-1 special, because if you were an early abstract believer, you already got an airdrop. You already got rewarded for believing in us. And it was a pretty big airdrop, to say the least. I mean, $50 million amongst 15,000 people, 12,000 people. It was a pretty meaningful one, scaled accordingly, of course. But, that happened. And so then we were, the market was hot. We launched literally Pengu at the pico top of the market. Basically from December 16th to January 16th, it was just hot. We delayed mainnet a little bit, and then we launched mainnet probably 6 weeks after Pengu. Now, we took this one on the chin. It could have been a better launch. I still think, all things considered, like, we're builders that build and want to build, not like just hype something and create some hype extraction moment or you're right? Like, really for us, day one, though to the community, it was like, month 6, day 1 was mainnet, and that's when the build really transpired. We came out a little lackluster, a couple bugs, a couple third parties weren't indexing correctly, whatever. So we kind of had this huge hiatus moment off of the airdrop. Then we kind of came back down to reality. But that was beautiful. Like I just did an interview before this, and I said, look, red candles and FUD make community. And the beauty about the Pudgy Penguin story, and a huge part about our success, was that huge FUD moment, right? It actually followed the exact same Pudgy trajectory. And that's why I mentioned it, which was like, Pudgy was the hottest thing in the world for 2 weeks. And then FUD for months. It washed out all the non-believers. Then I took it over. We brought it back. And then as we started to gain momentum, we became the biggest and the best, and the rest is history. And so Abstract really followed actually a similar play pattern. For a couple weeks, everyone and their mom was like waiting for Abstract. Mainnet, came out of the gates a little less hot than anticipated. I still think way better than most, but we had all the wind in our sails. So we kind of got grounded back to reality, and then we just had a choice, which was like listen to the peanut gallery and everyone telling us to pivot to build, Blast or whatever they wanted to do. We stuck to our guns. We fixed all the problems, and we just said, dude, we know this is the way to do it, and we just stuck to it. I think it's 2.5, 3 months maybe since that moment, and I'm so happy we did. And now I know of a ton of chains building their own portal style product, which seemed obvious. We're leading the charge. I think we're one of the most anticipated chains right now. But more importantly, I think we're one of the most you know like real chains in terms of like activity and actually doing it right. Our messaging is farmers will get smoked, so farmers have not touched our ecosystem. Our ecosystem, I think, is a top 5 ecosystem in crypto. I don't think you can find 5 chains that have more on the chain, more fun and engaging things to do on the chain than Abstract. The product is beautiful. The AGW with the portal combination is just smooth. It's accomplished everything that we wanted it to accomplish. And now we're focused on like really taking the experience and all these things to the next level. All the metrics are up and to the right. Dex volume, wallets, transactions, just growing month over month over month. And I think it's just increasingly clear here that, when it comes down to L2s, it's really Abstract and base. And once I think we win the L2 race, I think we'll go in and really compete to be one of the biggest and best chains in all of crypto. But that's the story. It was actually, I gave you the loaded version, but I think it was worth the context because I think it's pretty cool in hindsight.
Yeah, and then connecting
Yeah.
even back to like early days of Ethereum, like the early days of Ethereum when it launched, what, July of 2015, there was a bunch of us that came from Web 2 consumer that really had the same vision that I think, Luca was just like articulating, where we were just too early, right? It was like you're trying to do Uber like back like I don't know in the late 90s, or like people AT&T had the idea of Uber. Like, eventually like they knew where you were, right? Because you had the handsets, and eventually when they had the iPhone, some version of like a mobile phone, like they knew where, like, GPS wise where you were, but the infrastructure wasn't there. Like you saw the same thing with like mobile gaming. Like the Unity game engine came out in what, 04, 05, and it wasn't really until about 2012 you saw Clash and you know things like Candy Crush, and then later on 2015 you saw Honor of Kings really just like make mint mobile gaming as a category. So there's a lot of us that came from consumer into the early days of Ethereum where we were just like working night and like nights and weekends, and it just like the infrastructure wasn't there. I think to Luca's point, I think everyone ended up over indexing on infrastructure to where you have what, 217 L2s that are either in production or coming out this year, another 115 L1s. And what people forget about consumer, which I think Luca team always articulate, is that it's actually not the actual infrastructure. Like the infrastructure, as long as it's good enough, there's 3 things you need to get right. It's, one, it's curation, right? People come to a marketplace, right? This is why people go to the App Store, right? Or the Play Store, or they go to Netflix for content, or Amazon for, for goods. They want to come to a portal where it's vetted, right? There's, that when you come in, as Luca and team are bringing in people from Crypto Curious, people from TikTok, Instagram, there's a 1 in 3 chance that they're going to discover an app that's interesting and fun, right? Because if they're dumpster diving for apps, they're going to churn out and never come back on chain. But once you actually have curated a marketplace, you got to do discoverability, right? So like as I'm kind of growing up on the App Store, I'm playing Clash. I'm getting served Fruit Ninja. I'm getting served Candy Crush. I'm not getting served a workplace productivity tool, and vice versa, right? And this is where as people come in and they find their anchor app, whether it's like if it's like Gotcha, then we're gonna like introduce them to Multiplier. If they're coming in through Myriad, we're going to introduce them to like Pandora, right, and vice versa. And then lastly, I think this is where we're gonna really unlock the expertise of I think what the Pudgy team have done, which is distribution. That's the third thing, right? We're probably the best ecosystem where we can help you get from 0 to 1. You literally see people coming here, project, and they literally overnight stumble upon 25, 50,000 DAUs, right? You saw Myriad go what in less than 2 months get up to 300 and you know no, it was like 473,000 users, literally just like 0 to 60, and eventually you have product market fit, and you can get from we get you from 0 to 1. They're going to get themselves to from 1 to 100, and then we meet them on the other end where we then help them get to 1 million DAUs. If it's that type of business that they're building. So again, like this idea of consumer crypto has been around for forever, but only now do we have the infrastructure, and only now do we actually have a team like Abstract, where we actually understand what it takes to reach the masses.
And to Michael's point, it's pretty interesting because like if you have a fun, really good app that is like positioned for like our ecosystem and I spotlight it, you're making $500,000 a month. Just set. Like we've done it now like 10 times. We've like proven it. It's pretty spectacular, right? Like if you're a builder and you're listening to this and and you're building like a fun, viral, engaging product, like we just click a button and we can get you 25 to 50,000 users, snap of a finger, and if you have a good monetization loop, $500,000 plus a month in revenue, and then you take it, right?
Is that the weekly badge that you're referring to?
It's badges, it's spotlight. So spotlight is the badge takes that number even higher, right? But the spotlight is just like the top 6 apps on Portal. That spotlight is a beast for that reason, because people are constantly coming there, clicking, and they see something new, they're all clicking on it. And if it's good, they're staying. It's pretty awesome.
To reinforce the data that you guys are describing, 300, 400,000 daily active users on some of these apps, these are real people. Those are real users. Others may claim levels around there in terms of users. It's farmers, it's bots, it's anons. These guys are real users. For those builders that are listening and they're looking to drive real revenue, we've talked about this on the show. This is crypto's coming out moment. It's time to break out of the echo chamber and approach real people and real users outside of the box of crypto. We have the builders. There is the ambition. I think there's a level of confusion for these builders as to how to break out because they've been talking to the same people for the same long, playing the same playbooks. What are a few pieces of advice that you could provide to the builders and the audience, that if they're not driving that level of revenue right now, and you're saying that they can be driving $500,000 a month in real revenue from real users on Abstract, what are some things to help them get started, and what kind of advice do you have for those guys? Innovating finance, global, institutional, and on-chain. Deep liquidity to drive capital efficiency. Now, maximize yields on institutional-grade liquid staking with METH. Unlock $1 trillion of capital via Bitcoin. All of this secured by Mantle's treasury of billions in stables and ETH capital pools. This entire ecosystem is coordinated by a vast network of seasoned VCs that are aiming to create the next generation of banking and financial technology. This is Mantle.
Yeah, I think our ecosystem is it's really tailored. I mean, at this point, you see what we're going for, which is like, I want to entertain the user, right? Everyone tries to build. A lot of people in crypto try to build a lot of different mechanisms, and they're all meaningful builds. Don't get me wrong, but I think the one nerve that nobody's really tried to own is fun. Like fun, man. People stay because they want to have fun. And if you actually look at blockchain rails, like people, I think, totally misinterpret blockchain rails. But if you're like a Web 2 builder, blockchain rails is like Stripe without the bullshit, PayPal without the bullshit, right? And if you know what I'm talking about, like fun is a really interesting category, because fun is the most handicapped category when it comes down to payment processors. Meaning fun usually to a bank is high risk, right? And when you're high risk payment processing, the toll that they take on both the operation of your business and the fees that they take are insane. Meaning, a high risk payment processor is going to charge you 5 to 10% depending on your business, right? Most fund applications in the world are high risk. And so 5 to 10% is a gargantuan fee. No one should be taking 5 to 10% fee of anything, right? And then on the other side of it, you have all of these restrictions and just I know people that have fun applications that are considered high risk. They have whole teams that are managing the requests from the bank. And so I actually think fun on crypto solves a huge problem for people building fun. Now, I think for us, like a lot of that is like new, different iterations of gaming. I'm a huge believer in gaming. I think gaming got a bad beat uh, in 2021. I mean, it got a great beat in 2021. But since then, it's got a bad beat because a lot of people got burned because gargantuan pumps and obviously things went down. But I think gaming is going to play a huge role here, like new novel mechanisms to wager and to bet amongst one another. I think like this is really the place that we want to tackle and the place that we're really servicing our users. I think my advice, one, if you're building fun in crypto, I think the best ecosystem to deploy is on Abstract. I'd probably say it's Abstract and Solana. It'd be hard to refute any of the other two. Um, I know Abstract because I can give you PMF instantly if you have a great build. So I think most builders in crypto, what we found now building the chain is like, there's really two things. One, builders in crypto are great builders and great developers, but they're really bad at community building and product market fit and marketing, right? That's probably universal for a lot of ecosystems. And so, we kind of supplement we have an amazing community team. We put community on our back. I encourage all builders to build a community on the chain, but it's not as prevalent as maybe the next one because everything's like nuclei. I was going to say like nucleus, nucleus. It's like a giant nucleus, that we've kind of got going on where it's like everyone is a part of the same community, whether you're a part of On-Chain Heroes or Abstract or Multiplier. Like you're all part of the same group, which is a really interesting, dynamic that I have yet to see before, within a blockchain ecosystem. And then the other side of it is, I think, really building in the spirit of Web 2. So what I mean by this is it's actually pretty frustrating, but a lot of builders in crypto speak to the Web3 audience and the Web3 audience only, meaning, everything is denominated in ETH, everyone's saying connect wallet, things like that. But I want to try to reinvent this narrative where it's like Web2 users are Web3 users, but if you build for Web3 users, you're alienating Web2 users because they don't understand that positioning and that framing, right? So meaning if I told a Web3 user to create an account, they would understand it, right? If I told a Web2 user to create an account, they'd understand it. If I told a Web2 user to create a wallet, they'd be like, wallet? What, in my pocket? Right? And I think there's just like a lot of framing and messaging and positioning that I think a lot of Web3 builders handicap their TAM by building for Web3 and Web3 only. And it's something as simple as like messaging, right? And just like words on a page and denominations. And in the beginning with Abstract, I let builders kind of do what they want. I think this next phase, you're going to see us really get in the trench with a lot of these top apps and refine this messaging, refine this build. Because for a minute there, first couple of weeks, I was like, well, let's not even try to go out. We got to capture in because we made a mistake by going, I think, too far out rather than inward. I think we've captured a lot of that inward crypto existing audience. I think you're going to see a huge pivot from us in terms of how we really are marketing outside of the crypto sphere and speaking to that net new user. But that would be my advice to them. One, either deploy on Abstract or Solana. I would say Abstract because I think from an app perspective, we could just click a button and give you those users. But it's hard to say that it's hard to argue that Solana isn't leading consumer today. But we're, I think, a close second in terms of, I think, that consumer adoption curve. But you got to give credit where credit is due and live in reality. I think it's Solana based and Abstract right now in the consumer push. And then on the other side, just like build for that Web2 user because the Web2 user is a Web3 user, right? Like, and the Web3 user, they're both the same people, but a Web3 user is not a Web2 user, right? And so you'll handicap your TAM. That'd probably be my advice to them.
Yeah, and you see just a lot of people coming over to Abstract, especially crypto native like startups, because like the one thing that they want, isn't a grant, right? It isn't, any type of engineering product help. It's users. People want to build sustainable businesses. So like, and this is no different than Web 2. Like why is the App Store? Why is Steam? Why are these marketplaces like dominating? It's because it's a massive user acquisition engine. Like that's the thing that people don't quite understand coming over to Web3. The same rules apply. And I think we just, because we all have Web 2 backgrounds and we've, operated at scale, like that's just so obvious. You're just unlocking kind of new superpowers using crypto rails. But if you look at Abstract, it is the ultimate user acquisition engine where, when people come over, and this is why we're super focused on kind of a Gen A, Gen Z user base with discretionary spending power, from 8 to 12 high GDP, markets. Because like those are, again, this is no different than what Apple does. This is a crypto version of Apple, where if we can deliver, on-chain heroes to, Myriad, to, Monsters Fund, like if we can give them users from the US, Western Europe, China, Japan, Korea, like again, like Luca's saying, like overnight they end up with like 50, 100,000 users. They're actually becoming sustainable businesses overnight, where then now they're able to graduate and then like kind of eventually try to figure out how to grow even further. And we kind of bring in that next cohort to kind of king make. Like, to be honest, like that's what people want. And I think and again, like Abstract's not for everybody. You have to be a competent team, or, a quality team with a quality product. Because again, it's like we're building the ultimate nightclub, whether it's in New York, LA, Miami, and we have all the cool kids, the celebrities in there. It's like we can get you in, but we can't get you late. Like you got to show up with like a damn good product.
Story of my life. So you have people on the chain now, obviously tons of users. Some of my closest friends that have been inside and out of crypto are racing roaches. They're on Multiplier. They are in this chat right now on Telegram, doing lotteries on Gacha. They're enjoying it, and their girlfriends are using it. They're getting weekly XP. It's something that activates a part of the brain that is reminiscent of DeFi summer and of the times in crypto where you would come back to an application or a platform of applications and use it on a daily or weekly basis, talk about it with your friends, and create this consistent kind of funnel where you're just keep coming back to it. So like you guys said, I think this is like 1 to 5, but it's time to go from now 5 to 50 to 100, and that is going to require another level of distribution. Michael, I know you've been traveling a lot, doing a lot of meetings, work, and there's quite a bit of plans around how you guys plan to kind of scale this to the next cohort, which I think specifically, as Luca is saying, is pretty much now no longer part of the in-group, very much part of the out-group in terms of crypto or not. So how do we get from, this group of diehard power users right now across, let's say, a dozen apps to several dozen apps with 10x the amount of users globally in these countries and different communities? And realistically, like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think I think what we're doing with consumer crypto is no different than what you've seen with hip hop, streetwear, right? Any cultural movement, right? Where like you look at like something like Off White, like again, like what Virgil did, he wasn't the first, right? You had like Stussy and a ton of other like kind of OGs in streetwear, but somehow like the way that Virgil built Off White, it ended up collabing with LVMH, right? And I think ultimately, when what you first do is like you have to kind of like shore up your base. Like we have to make sure that we have a lock on kind of Gen A, Gen Z crypto natives from these like 8 to 12 markets that matter, that really drive discretionary spending, which then again, like Luca's saying, like piles into a lot of these fund based apps. Once you do that, I guarantee you every global brand will start coming knocking on your door, right? Because what do they want? If you're a global brand, you want one of two things. You either want a bag, which they got the last 2 cycles because it's pay to play, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? You get a patch on the jersey, you get a press release, but nothing really happens because they're not really motivated to like make something, with that underlying tech, and they're not really sending their users on chain. The other thing that they would rather also want is get to a younger demo, right? This is why LVMH is like, fucking with streetwear or Adidas or Nike, right? And that's not just streetwear. That's anything cultural where it's like a younger audience, like hip hop. And so again, like this is where we just crush it. Where when we're collaborating with like a global brand, you'll see us being very selective in that it has to overlap with the audience that we have, right? That Gen A, Gen Z crypto native audience, where we're bringing in, like an F1 versus like a Procter and Gamble. Nothing wrong with Procter and Gamble; they're massive, but like that Venn diagram doesn't really overlap. And when you do bring on, one of these global brands, you're putting them on crypto rails in a way where it's like you're injecting abstract directly into their tech stack. It's not like a side thing where kind of what you saw with Starbucks, where Starbucks had their like main like, rewards app, but then there was like a separate experiment on, on crypto rails, like in parallel. Like that doesn't help. Like it has to be like in their existing app where their actual users are. And if you do that correctly, you're getting 1% of their fan base every time you do this. So every brand that you're bringing on, you're getting some fraction of 1% of their fan base coming on to crypto rails, specifically to abstract. You do this 10 times, like you're going to trip over, a million, 10 million, 100 million users. And again, the flywheel keeps going.
Yeah, and brand new users as well. And I feel like there's two segments here, right? There's like the institutional, and then there's like these more consumer facing brands. How are you kind of thinking about this? Which path is more valuable, or what are the different strategies here for each path?
I think from my perspective, it's, when you work with global brands that have consumers, you're essentially bringing them on chain, right? Into, using Abstract Global Wallet, into the portal, into streaming, right? Where their users just coming on having fun, right? And then we're also sending our users to their brands. I think the stuff that like, I think Luca's has been spending his time on talking to institutions, that's how do you bring institutions into the eventual token, right? That you have to have a token because, it's a decentralized network, and it has to be owned by everybody and nobody. And I think what you're seeing now, with so many of these tokens just pump and dump is just because like they're just PvPing for a very small amount of crypto liquidity. Like this is why you have Bitcoin and ETH just on a completely separate playing field, right? Because you have these ETFs that are bringing in TradFi liquidity. And again, like TradFi is ridiculously smart. They've been studying this stuff since the early days. Right? People fade them, but there's a lot of smart people there that understand this stuff. And again, they understand consumer to a T. So like the stuff that Luke is talking about, like that's exactly how they're thinking. So they're trying to figure out who's going to be the winner, as we move over to consumer crypto. Because with all these shifts in computing environment, cloud to mobile to containers to eventually blockchain, there's trillions of dollars each time we shift. And it's every 8 to 12 years, explosion of apps that are going to happen. And TradFi understands this very, very well, right? They made a killing on cloud because what did that do? It unlocked e-commerce, Amazon, social, Facebook. When we moved over to mobile, just these things, because it's in my pocket, mobility, that's games. There's a camera on it, Instagram. There's GPS, Uber. When we did when we commercialized Kubernetes, that was streaming. Streaming existed, but Kubernetes optimized the shit out of it. So our first clients were Netflix, Discord, Twitch. So when Luca and team are talking about this next shift to consumer crypto, every institution understands this, that whenever you shift computing platform paradigms, trillions of dollars activates at the app layer. And then ultimately that underlying platform, that marketplace, will also be worth, billions.
Is that the right way to think about abstract and pudgy and conglomeration of these technologies and the distribution base is essentially as this matchmaking engine between the fun segment that Luca described, everyone's in it to have fun, and the global brands that are looking for distribution, and abstract and Pengu is the matchmaking in between?
I didn't even know this, but like the Pudgy Penguin case study gives us so much leverage when having these conversations. Guys, we're Michael's able, because Michael's really leading the charge on a lot of these B2B conversations. He speaks that language better than anyone I know. That, like, for example, we talk to Disney. Disney will not talk to anybody, but we have Pudgy Penguins. They're so aware and conscious of it. Or we'll talk to Paramount or NASCAR. We'll do like all these different conversations, and Pudgy is such a prevalent role in terms of like the credibility side of like it's a huge door opener for people to work with us, and I think a huge closer for getting a lot of these deals done, because we bring so much to the table. I mean, you guys will see the full picture here in probably the next 12 months, but the Igloo ecosystem is just so it handholds each other so much, right? Pudgy's top of funnel, really the toppest, broadest top of funnel, brings people in from crypto, brings people in from Web 2. That segues into a bunch of other different funnels because of the credibility and the trust that we've built there. That comes back to the chain and then the wallet, and then some of the there's an app or two that we might play into the whole flywheel, and just it's all about each piece of the puzzle supporting one another. A lot of people have asked us, like, the Igloo has a lot of things going on within it, and I was like, yeah, it would be a problem if they all didn't really tie into each other super, super well. And so they're not distractions. They're actually pieces of the puzzle that uplift one another and actually support one another. As one succeeds, the other succeeds. You'll see it even with Pengu. Pengu will go up. All the meme coins on Abstract will go up, right? We probably have the best outside of Ethereum. I think we have the best NFT ecosystem by a Texas mile in terms of quality of builder. That comes from Pudgy, right? Chains are not made right now if you don't have a hot NFT and meme coin ecosystem. Boom. So Pudgy supports there. Then people from Walmart are coming in, scanning the QR code, hopping into the experience. Then they're on the chain as like a novice user, right? So it's just such a. I actually basked in it a couple of days ago over the weekend. I was like, damn, we're really doing it, dude. It's all fitting together like a puzzle piece. So they, to that point of just Pudgy is a huge anchor here, because specifically on the creative stuff, like anything that is like IP driven, it really gives us all the leverage and more to go and close these opportunities. And we've seen some of the best apps in crypto are tools to go and drive IP, OpenSea, Pump Fun, Top Shot. Like, it all comes back to IP at the end of the day. Or at least like the exciting, fun stuff and the things that we're trying to build or trying to help incubate and bolster within our ecosystem.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing on Pudgy is that it resonates with both crypto native startup founders as well as global brands, right? If you're kind of this, you're a builder, like, crypto native builder, you look up to what Luca, Lorenzo, Chef, Fedant did with, Pudgy. Like, literally, it is the only thing that went from crypto native to mass market, right? To Walmart, to Target, where Van Eck introduced their, Bitcoin, Ethereum ETFs using a penguin. Like, that is what find me someone like in crypto that doesn't want that, right? That trajectory for their project. And then on the, like, I think Luca touched on this, and on the global brand side, if you're Disney, you're any one of these like you're worth a couple of, tens of billions. They're not going to talk to you unless you're at their level, right? So I think what the Penguin does, the fact that it's in retail, it's has over 40 billion views on Giphy, right? More than Disney. These are things where it's like, okay, like, this team actually understands how to build a business. Not only how to build a business, how to go to, mass market. And then all of a sudden the conversation is different.
Yeah, I think within the crypto circles, that level of distribution is really what a lot of teams are looking for now. I mean, I've been putting this out for quite a while. It's just that, like, the technical differentiations used to somewhat matter when there wasn't like this kind of baseline for fast, cheap chains. Now we're just so far past that. The UX has gotten there, and it's just like no longer a differentiator. And so I see that. I see. I see this like slow end game for abstract starting to appear, where you just kind of become like the top of funnel for all of crypto, where you're able to scale the IP of Pudgy Penguins so large that, um, as you say, these mega consumer brands are interested. I'm just curious, like, what's your 12-month, 18-month abstract vision here? Like, how do we go from, I kind of asked this earlier, but like, what's the next big like leap for you guys, as far as like, if we were to have this conversation in a year or 18 months, where are we going to be?
Michael, me or you? Okay, I think 12 to 18 months from now, we got to have 5 to 10 monster big companies brought them on blockchain rails, really using that as a place for top brands who want to get on chain to kind of come into. That'd be one. The second one, Portal really needs to be the first ever crypto super app. You go to one place, you can do everything. Best trading experience, best discovery experience, best social experience. And it just needs to be the hub, not just for abstract. I just think for crypto, I think there's a vision there. And I think from we and probably the most important metric, but I think over the next 12 to 18 months, if there's 10 viral crypto apps that just break through, half of them need to be from abstract. Half of them need to come from our ecosystem. Uh, and that's the hardest part, I think. The blockchain side is like that. There some of your destiny is in the hands of others to a certain extent. Like people forget, Solana was great, but it wasn't until Jupiter. I remember I was using Solana on Orca and Radium. It was booty. You couldn't trade anything. You were buying the Samao. You remember that Samao, that Husky? That thing was horrible to trade on that. And then Jupiter came, and once I used Jupiter on Solana, I aped Solana. I said, I get it. This is the one. It's the best experience, right? Phantom Solana, Phantom Jupiter combo, right? So, without that, Solana's, I don't think Solana, right? Ethereum, same thing, without MetaMask and OpenSea. So, some of it, but it's also about like who you cultivate and what's the value prop for them. So I think we're really just focused on the value prop. Our value prop is users and distribution. We have the interface that if we put you at the top of that interface, I will give you instant PMF, right? And with that instant PMF, you should be able to snowball that into bigger and better and more PMF, right? But that 0 to 1 is so important. And that, I think, is just walking the floor of all the developer conferences. You know me, I'm shaking hands with everyone, talking to everyone. That's everyone's biggest problem, dude, is understanding the consumer experience. But to be frank, we're doing like weekly masterminds. So I do weekly masterminds with the NFT founders and the meme coin founders. Peter's doing them with the app builders. Igar's doing them. Like we can adjust, we can fix all the woes with your product within a couple weeks of you asking questions and showing in these masterminds. I'm not too worried about that, right? Like I think the big case is like getting you users and compounding that and allowing that to segue into more users. Like that is our value proposition, and we've got to scale that big time. But I think we have all the ingredients and we have the foundation right now to really start marching in that direction.
Yeah. I think whenever you look at these like big shifts in computing paradigms, whether it's the cloud to mobile to containers now to blockchain, I think you're looking for three things, which Luca all just hit on. I'm just, regurgitating or giving people the TLDR. You always have to have the big breakout native platform hits, right? Like the things that are like whether if it's cloud, it's got to be, Facebook and Amazon. If it's mobile, it's Uber and Instagram. Like whatever that is native to crypto, to blockchain on crypto rails, like Luca said, like half of them have to be popping off of abstract. Once you have that checked off, the second thing to know that you're on this trajectory to where you are the consumer chain is global brands adopting it into their tech stack. Once you start seeing that, like this is what happened with AWS, right? AWS started with a bunch of like Y Combinator startups, and then all of a sudden it was on this trajectory to being used by Fortune 100, and then all of a sudden CIA started using it, right? The same thing with containers with Kubernetes. It started with the crypto, the startup, the cool kids like Netflix, Discord, Twitch, and then we got 72% of the Fortune 500 in like a 26-month span. Same thing for us. It's like that second thing, that signal, non-pay for play, actual organic adoption by global brands. Once we get about like half the global brands that are coming on chain or using crypto rails, building on abstract, then oh shit, all the crypto native kids, the startups are using abstract, all the global brands are using abstract. Then that last third piece is what you're seeing with TradFi, and they're creating products around coins that they believe in, Bitcoin and Ethereum to start off, right? I think Solana's getting to that point. Like when you start TradFi rallying around, the actual like token that has hopefully technical utility, game over. Now you got the liquidity coming in.
Awesome, guys. As we speak, Pengu is breaking into the top 100 coins by market cap. I think there's a natural place to wrap. We got away from this a little bit. Maybe we didn't ask last time Luca was on the show, but we end every podcast by asking if you were stuck in an elevator for 1-2 minutes with anyone, dead or alive, who would you choose to be stuck in an elevator with to explain Abstract, explain Pengu, explain Pudgy, explain what you guys are doing here? Who would you guys choose and why?
Steve Jobs.
Mr. Jobs. Why?
I'd probably take Mark Zuck. I'd say Mark Zuck. Mark Zuck's really beat the allegations, man, and he's really him. I'm not gonna lie. I think people actually don't give Mark Zuck the credit he needs and deserves. I'd take Mark. I think Mark would get it more than Steve. I feel like Steve could give me the cold shoulder and be a waste of a minute. He's either going to love me or he's going to hate me. And I can't take that risk. I feel like me and Mark would get along swimmingly. So I'd go Mark. And why would I go Mark? I always thought, I said it on an Inner Igloo last week, so it's pretty funny. I always thought Facebook would buy Pudgy Penguins. And I have no interest in selling, right? So now, but when I first bought Pudgy, Lorenzo asked me, he's like, yo, what's the plan here? And I was like, we'll sell to Facebook or Coinbase. Those are the two I would think, I thought. And Facebook, because if you actually look at our social, we actually renege a ton of Facebook's big objection is social media is bad for people. We'll look at Pudgy Penguins as the premier example. If they're going, as a contrarian take to that. If you look at Meta, right, the face of the metaverse, no better face of the metaverse than a cute penguin if they're going there. And I think it's just a great way to just like Trojan horse a lot of the products they're doing. And I think Zuck would get it. And so I actually really have a lot of respect for Zuck. He's super young, still super young, did it when he was 20. I would probably go Zuck, actually. It'd be a contrarian. Most people would not think that. Probably then Elon, then Steve. But I would go Zuck. I want to talk to Zuck.
Michael?
I'll go the other end of the spectrum. To the OGs of the internet itself, like Vint Cerf, Bob Kahn from DARPA, when they actually essentially created the rails that became the internet. Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the World Wide Web in '89. Because again, like with the stuff that we're doing now, we're just extending the internet. This is like the arc of the internet that started way back when with DARPA from like the 60s, the 70s to the commercial boom that we all grew up with, to essentially, what Web3 is just an extension of, what Web2 is, what the World Wide Web is capable of. So I think that trio of folks, they would get it, right? Because effectively, like, these are the inventors of the internet itself.
Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today. It's been awesome to watch the Abstract journey, follow the entire Pudgy Penguin journey, and look forward to the next 12 to 18 months. I think that some of these brands are going to rock the socks off of what people in crypto think is possible and hopefully inspire as well. So appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.